You're listening to Music Tectonics.
Welcome back to Music Tectonics, where we go beneath the surface of music and tech. I'm your host, Dmitri Vietze. I'm also the founder and CEO of Rock, Paper, Scissors. We are a PR firm that focuses on music and tech. And this is fun because I'm not really a performing artist, but the one person that's actually showed up as I guess you could say a music critic to one of my speaking engagements is Ari Herstand, who I have with me today. How you doing, Ari?
Great. Yeah, it's good to be here.
Yeah, I did a while back. I did a South by Southwest panel with some of the heavyweight producers and directors from various NPR programs, and you were at the front row taking notes, and you ended up writing up, which was pretty cool.
Yeah, that was. I mean, I still reference that talk that you led today. I mean, it was the How to Get Your Music Out on the NPR, and it was a really great panel. I remember that, and I still send people to that article that I wrote because it was just. I mean, you had some powerhouses on there. Bob Boilen was on the panel. I remember you had the woman who's kind of placed music on Morning Becomes Eclectic, I believe, and All Things Considered, and that kind of stuff. And yeah.
Yeah. So that was cool. So it's fun to have
Morning
you on.
edition.
Yeah, Morning Edition, exactly. It's fun to have you here. We've collaborated on some other stuff when we did programming for the DIY Musician Conference, CD Babies Conference, where you came and spoke and really contributed a lot to the conversation of artists there. So if you don't know Ari, Forbes called him the poster child of DIY music. He's based in the LA area. He's an artist himself. He's got a book called How to Make It in the New Music Business, and he's been writing on his own business advice blog, Ari's Take, for several years. People oftentimes consider it a go-to place to find out about different tools and services and practices that artists can take, and he's written for a lot of other great music industry publications, from Music Connection to American Songwriter, Digital Music News, and so many others. And we've never done this. We've never actually dug in, set aside some time, and really talk through where your view is on some things, and just generally speaking in terms of practices in the music industry. But also, now that we're in this very weird moment in time with COVID-19, the pandemic, shelter at home, would love to get your view on some of how people can tackle this and what's been coming up right now. So, but let's just start off. I hope I got the bio relatively right, but I'd be curious. I always like to ask this. When you sit on an airplane and the person next to you says, "So, what do you do?" What would you tell them in your 1-minute pitch?
Oh my gosh. Well, that changes weekly for me. So it's usually whatever the most current thing that I'm working on at the moment. And so, but currently, I mean, I guess it's really settled in the last couple of years with Ari's Take. I say I run a music business and artist advocacy company, I'm sorry, a music business education and artist advocacy company. So, music business education, it started with just the blog, with my blog, but now it has turned into Ari's Take Academy, and I have a podcast, and basically that's kind of the main thing. And then artist advocacy is I'm always kind of speaking out on behalf of artists, and so that's the easy kind of in the nutshell pitch. And then if they ask me to go deeper, I'm like, yeah, I'm a musician too, and yada yada yada. I mean, I have like 17 hyphens always, but like it's now easy to say that because Ari's Take has become a thing, and yeah, just to say that I run that.
That's cool. I mean, you did kind of, you kind of, well, obviously you started as an artist yourself, but then you also blogged, then you wrote your book, and now you've got a whole kind of educational content machine. So you've kind of just kept going down that path, pulling on the thread of curiosity and turning it into a business model as you go, which is super impressive, and I think useful for folks in the music tech scene to hear about anyway. So let's just dive in. What's your experience been since the shelter at home situation has emerged with COVID-19, from an artist perspective, and also from what you're seeing in the music scene, and how that takes form with your advice to artists? What's the basic experience, first of all?
Sure. So, I find that people during this shutdown period fall on two extremes, one side or the other. You see, on one side of the extreme, people, they're the ones who completely shut down. They either lost their job or they're furloughed, and they don't know what to do with themselves, and so they sit at home and watch Tiger King all day, every day. And then that's one extreme where they're really not doing anything. And then there's the other extreme where the people that are just turn into workaholics and are like holy shit, I got to make this work, and then they just go 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 go. So I'm on the latter end of the extreme, and I have never been busier in my entire life. I've literally been like pulling 16-hour days almost every single day for the last month or so, and primarily because like once the mayor of Los Angeles shut down music venues, which was the same day he shut down restaurants and bars. So this is before the shelter at home order, and it was like just like maybe 4 days before that. My friends and I, we kind of put our heads together. I mean, we're like, what are we going to do? How are we going to help these artists and music venues that now have their entire revenue cut and their livelihoods cut? So we came together. I came together with two of my friends, Ashley Mayetta and Andrew Lieb, and we created a live streaming music festival we call UnCancelled Music Festival. And so we had been working like nonstop on this thing. And basically, what it is we got music venues from all over the world, some pretty notable venues like the Hotel Cafe in Los Angeles, Rockwood Music Hall in New York. We're talking the World Cafe Live in Philly, and then venues from Portugal and Japan. And basically, they book the artists. So we wanted to engage music venues because any artist can go live from their bedroom on Facebook and pop in a Venmo link in there. And we've seen that all the time. You know, I think I've never seen more Instagram lives or Facebook lives in my life. Everybody is going live right now, which is fine. But at the same time, we're like, how are we going to help their bottom lines? And how are we going to help the music venues that can't go live from their bedrooms? So our concept for UnCancelled Music Festival was the venues book the talent. They know how to do that. They have the context of the talent. They get a cut of all the revenue that comes in. The artists perform. They get a large cut of all the revenue that comes in. We also teamed up with Music Cares, run by the Recording Academy, and they have an emergency financial assistance fund set up for any musician or actually any music professional in the States can apply for emergency funding. And so we donated a portion of the proceeds there. And then we hosted this, our first iteration, it was hosted on StageIt. And so StageIt is a paywall kind of ticketed performance platform. So we didn't want to do it on Facebook Live or anything like that. We wanted the payment to be streamlined, and we wanted to make these make it known that this was an event, and you buy tickets to that. And we had some pretty headline marquee artists. You know, we had Colby Calais, and we had Betty Who and Jukebox the Ghost and Dan Wilson, and within the first week and a half, we actually had over 350 artists perform, and we grossed around $100,000 just in the first week and a half. Yeah, and I mean, honestly, from inception to day one of the festival, it was 10 days. Like, so from it was
Wow.
like that's why we were working around the clock. Like, we literally, you know, we got Fender to come in and book a stage, and they booked some pretty marquee artists like Brian Fallon and the Aces and Waxahachie, and so it was cool. And you know, now we're in this like transition period where you know, Stage It was cool. For the time being, but that tech has been around. It was built in 2010. The platform hasn't been updated since 2012, and they'll be the first to tell you this. And they're like, yeah, you know, this is like a it's like a limo, but it's like if the limo was built in the 80s. And we're like, yeah, that's kind of like how this tech functions. I mean, for the tech geeks out there, the streaming technology runs on Flash. And for anybody who knows, the internet doesn't really run on Flash anymore, except Stage It still runs on Flash. So like, you know, 95% of all of our artist support came in helping them to enable Flash on their Chrome browser. And so now we're like evolving and shifting and switching platforms, and we're you know, we have now that because UnCancelled kind of blew up. I mean, it was written about in Billboard 3 times, Rolling Stone wrote about it, Variety, I mean, Deadline, everybody kind of like wrote about this when it came out of the gates, because we're the first, I think one of the first music festivals during the shutdown. You know, now we are having conversations with YouTube Live and Facebook Live and Maestro, which is a really interesting company, and Veeps, and all these live streaming companies that are really in the space right now. And so we've been testing out all these other live streaming platforms, and the funny thing is that no one has everything we need. And it's like, I think all these live streaming companies are scrambling right now to try to figure out what is the best um, way to enable people to live stream and make money from it. And, we have figured out what has worked. But we also, there's a lot of missing features on stage it, and so every company we talk to, we start pitching features like, oh yeah, that's a great idea, all right, we're going to add it, we're going to send it to the developers and try to get that added by next week or something like that. So it's been an interesting time for sure.
Yeah, so I mean, let's dig into that. That's really cool. Thanks for like giving us a case study that kind of got traction very early, and interesting to hear that you use Stage It. We had Evan, the founder and CEO of Stage It, on the podcast, so our listeners have either heard that or can go back and check it out. And his enthusiasm really shined through, and he was very transparent in that, he was kind of like, well, we did this thing, and all of a sudden, out of the blue, there's a lot of interest in what we're doing. So coming back to life has been kind of interesting there. And we've talked to some other folks, other platforms that are doing stuff, from YouNow to Topeka to Side Door, which is a house booking platform that's now trying Zoom concerts. And we're at Rock Paper Scissors, we're working with Maestro. Really love their model, maestro.io, because it does allow you to do so many things a little more updated based off of what a lot of the esports folks are doing, but capturing artist data and monetizing in multiple ways and so forth. But I want to kind of ask two questions. Phase one is just, what have you learned about live streaming from your experience with UnCancelled Music Festival? And then let's get a little even more tactical about what artists should be thinking about in relation to live stream. So let's start top level. What are some of the big takeaways about live streaming?
Yeah, I think the biggest takeaway is that the threshold for quality and what the public expects right now is not as high as you would expect. And in that, like, I think all you need to do is turn on the Tonight Show right now and see like the production level that they're working with. And because everybody's at home, it kind of works to artists' benefit that you don't need a multi-camera, perfectly executed, beautiful, flawless HD live stream right now. Like, live streaming from your laptops is totally sufficient and people are engaged. I think the biggest takeaway that artists can learn but also need to know is that you need to approach it like a live stream, not like a video, not like you're recording a live one take music video or performance video. It's a live stream in that there's an audience watching you, and so you need to interact with that audience in a way that you wouldn't interact, different than how you just like interact with people who comment on your YouTube video. I mean, these comments are coming in real time, and on stage it, like, the tips are flying in real time too. And so like the people who are doing the best at this, actually making the most amount of money, are the ones who interact with the chat box. And sometimes they'll take requests, or they'll call somebody out, or wish someone a happy birthday when they say it's their birthday. Or they'll tell an interesting story, and they'll bring somebody in. So I see, like, what we found with UnCancelled is that the artists that interact with the chat box are the ones where it goes the best. And we've experimented with a lot of different platforms now, and I think another like big takeaway is that you kind of work with what you have, and if you figure out how to make the platform work for you, and you kind of take ownership over it, it's going to work a lot better. There's no perfect platform out there right now. And so I've been seeing people do really interesting Instagram lives out there, and do really interesting Facebook lives, and all of that. And like you mentioned YouNow earlier. I looked into YouNow like 4 years ago or something, and interviewed a bunch of the artists who were like killing it on YouNow. And learned a lot from them of how they interact. But I think the most consistent thing that I've heard from every artist, and what I've noticed just from running UnCancelled, is that the artists who approach it like a live stream, and not just like a performance in a venue, and not just like a video recording, are the ones that do the best.
Cool. Well, we'll get into a little bit more about that, but I want to go down the rabbit hole of a little technology with you real quick. You've got multiple venues that are coming into this UnCancelled Music Festival via Stage It. What software are they using to get their performances all linked together, or are they all just logging into your Stage It account? How does that work?
So how we did it on Stage It, and this is going to shift. We did, about 350 shows on stage through this process, and now we're going to shift most likely to Maestro. We were talking to Veeps. I mean, this is you caught me at a very interesting time right now, because we've literally had conversations with like every live streaming platform out there, and yeah, Maestro is fantastic, and they seem to be the closest of what we're looking for and what we need. But on Stage It specifically, because they worked really well for us for the time being. Like I said, we grossed nearly $100,000 with them in like 12 days. And how it worked was our team on our side, because the reason that we could convince venues and artists to play with UnCancelled, even though we're taking a cut and we're donating to charity. I mean, we took a very small cut. We were very public about it. We only took 5%, which was not really sustainable, but we set it up as a charity, so we weren't really doing this to make money. We created the account for the stage, so we called them stages. So like it was the Hotel Cafe stage, it was the Fender stage, it was the Rockwood Music Hall stage, and then we would set up 2 accounts for each venue, each stage. We'd set up the main stage account and we'd set up the sound check account. And for instance, like the Hotel Cafe booked talent, get this, from noon to midnight every day for 12 days. So that's a lot of artists. So we would have, people would need to be sound checking while others were actually performing live. So we had a sound check account and a live and main stage account. And then we assigned everybody a sound check time, which was typically 24 hours before their stage time. And then they would log into the Hotel Cafe sound check account, and then they would do a full sound check. They had an hour to sound check. We also had we have a stage manager, and anyone who needs to troubleshoot the tech, they can email or call our stage manager, and our stage manager helps them through the tech, because most of the artists could not figure out how to enable Flash on Chrome. And that's just a little stage quirk that you kind of have to put up with. So, then they do that. So, yeah, we created, I think we had a total of maybe 18 different curators, and we call them curators because we had venues, we had brands, and we also had marquee artists. So it was like the Betty Who stage, and Betty Who booked all the artists who performed on her stage, and like Jukebox the Ghost, they performed, but they also booked all the other artists on their stage too. And then how we kind of split the money up, it was basically, you buy a ticket to the show, and we had a suggested, it was pay what you want tickets, but the suggested payment was $5, and the vast majority of people paid $5. Some people paid hundreds of dollars, and some people only paid 10 cents, which was the minimum. But the vast majority of people paid $5, and then you could tip through it. And we actually found in the first week, the average cost, like amount spent per attendee, was $7.50. And so that's the average of what everybody spent coming and watching the shows. And then we split that up. 70% of all the money went to the artists and the venues, the curators. 20% went to Stage It. That's their cut, just kind of what they take. 5% went to Music Cares, the charity organization, and then 5% went to us, went to UnCancelled. And then the way the money broke down with the curators was 45% went to the artists of their tips and the tickets that they generated, and then 25% actually went directly to the venues. And it was great. We were able to write the Hotel Cafe, I think it was like a $10,000 or $15,000 check, and all they had to do was book the talent for their stage, and we're helping to keep them above water right now when they have no income and no revenue.
Wow, that's amazing. Now I see why you say that you're working 16-hour days. That is an insane amount of coordination right there.
Yeah, it was pretty nuts. And it started with just the 3 of us. It started with just me, Andrew, and Ashley trying to do everything and literally figure all of this out on our own. And we're tech support, we're scheduling the stages, we're doing the graphic designs. Oh, the other thing is like we made a customized branded image for every single artist who performed, and that they would share. Now, mind you, by doing this, we got literally millions of impressions on Cancel, because we had some artists who had, 500,000 or 1 million. Actually, one artist I think had 2 million Instagram followers. And so they would share our graphic everywhere, which is great. But we designed 350 separate graphics per artist and a graphic for the stage and all of that stuff. And then, days into it, we're like, we can't do this on our own. And so we brought on some people to help us. And so now we have a team of 6 right now, actually a team of 7. We just brought on a business manager and because none of us are accountants and we're not really good with money. So we need somebody who, I mean,
Uh-oh.
we're just like, we're not masters at spreadsheets. Let's just put it that way. I mean, we're, everyone's gotten paid and they're getting paid. There's no problem. We're not Pledge Music here. So, hey, zing. Right.
Ouch. Yeah, now you
That's
know
right.
Ari's take, right, guys?
Oh, Pledge Music. We won't go down rabbit hole right now.
So this is a super useful real-time case study. So this is really cool, and I've been getting calls from venues and festivals and performing arts centers talking about how are we going to do this and so forth. So this is really cool to hear you kind of talking through what you're doing in real time, still picking the next platform and all that kind of stuff. Let's get back to artists real quick. You said some cool stuff about how you shouldn't treat this like it's a video. You shouldn't treat this like a regular performance. Can you say anything else? I guess let's go broad level for artists. What should they be doing right now in relation to live streaming? Should they be monetizing? Should they be using certain platforms? What decision points should they be making?
Right. So it really depends on what kind of relationship you have with your audience and who your fan base is. So, for instance, if you are a very emerging artist and you typically don't sell more than 100, 200 tickets to your local shows, and maybe you haven't really toured before, maybe, you're just kind of getting started, you probably don't want to set up a paywall live stream. You're probably not going to get that many people to pay to watch your live stream. So then Facebook Live, Instagram Live might be the option for you. And then you put up a paypal.me link or a Venmo, your Venmo, and then people can kind of tip you that way, and you just mention it. I've seen people on Instagram Live, because you can't obviously put links in there, they just like put up a sign next to them performing that says tip jar, and that's their Venmo or it's their PayPal or something like that. And then on Facebook, they put the main description as their PayPal, like tip me, and that's their paypal.me link. Now, if you have a bigger fan base, then I definitely encourage you to run ticketed concerts. Now, we spoke to Veeps, and they're telling us there's some artists there that they're going for the bigger artists. So we're talking Angel Olsen perform like live streamed on Veeps, and like Sure and a few others, kind of bigger names as well, maybe mid-level artists, I should say. And these artists, some of them are making $10,000 or $20,000 per show, and that's incredible. And so, like, I would encourage all the managers out there and the mid-level artists, like, find a streaming platform that works for you, and Stage It is an option. Veeps is an option. Maestro takes a little bit more customization, but that's definitely an option, and they have great functionality. There are many paywall options out there that you could look into. We even spoke to Eventbrite, and they've linked up with Vimeo, and they're going to be launching something pretty soon as well. And, I would very much encourage you to run a live stream concert series. Now, Sure, this band based out of LA, they're doing it interesting where they're going on a tour, and they've set up a whole tour, and the tour is just of their house that they live in. So fortunately, the band all lives. So it's like, tonight is the upstairs hallway, and they perform from the upstairs hallway. And like tomorrow is the downstairs bathroom, and then they perform from the downstairs bathroom, and they literally set up their whole system there. The whole band, drums, bass, guitar, the whole deal is set up in the upstairs hallway, and it actually is mixed really well, and it sounds really good. It's just really interesting how people are doing it.
It takes the whole concept of tour routing to another level.
Exactly. Yep.
That's cool. Well, cool. That's good perspective. Thinking sort of about kind of like how big's your fan base? What are you known for? What do people expect for you? Are you in the obscurity side of things or the ubiquity side? And that might choose whether you monetize with a ticket or just kind of start testing stuff out, but give people a way to monetize a little bit of donate or tip.
I think regardless of what stage of your career you're at, you should definitely enable people and allow people and give them permission to give you money. So however that is, whether, we had somebody on Stage It who she performed, she only sold 8 tickets. However, 2 of the people in there were either super fans or family or something like that, and 2 of them tipped her $100. So even though she sold 8 tickets, she made $200 at least, like probably $250 on that half-hour performance because she had a couple super fans out there. So you want to enable and allow people to pay you, however that is. So even if you're just doing an Instagram live, I encourage you to set up a virtual tip jar and like put your Venmo there and mention it, and people will pay you if you allow them to.
Yeah, it's funny. That reminds me when I was growing up in New York as a musician in school, and my buddy Max Moston, the violinist, I was playing flute. We would play on the streets of New York all the time, before school, during school, whatever, around New York City. But on Christmas Eve, we would play between the Russian Tea Room and Carnegie Hall every year. And there was always this youth symphony concert that was going on inside at Carnegie Hall, and people would come by, oh, look at the cute, starving, student musicians, and they would throw their extra tickets for the show into our violin case, and we would always sell them. And so we would make a bunch of money. That was our $200 tips.
Amazing.
You'd make some okay money with tips or whatever, but it was those big chunks. And like you said, you just create an opening. You don't know what's going to show up in your tip jar. So that's cool.
Exactly.
Let's back it up. You're basically, you've built this career now, written this book, and now you have this academy where you're giving kind of DIY artists tips on making a living in the digital era. I want to go back to what artists should be doing in the current moment. But before we do that, what are some of the first things on a top level that you're advising to artists that they should be doing to make a living in the digital era?
Sure. So that's constantly evolving as well. But the main thing that I've been kind of focusing on as of the last year, which I found that works really well, and you don't need that much of a budget. And now we're at a point where your music is competitive. So number one, what I always say to everybody is like, your music has to be great first. Otherwise, all the money on marketing PR in the world is not going to help you. So you have to get your music to that level that's competitive, and you can do that through market research, and you can kind of, there's platforms where you can have people take surveys and let you know if your music is ready for prime time. And then once you're at that level where you've written hundreds of songs and you have, maybe a handful of releases, you have some great video content, now you're ready to get started. Just to build an audience online, what I've been focusing on the last year, and I have an Ari's Take Academy course on, is running Instagram and Facebook ads to find where your audience exists and invite them into your world. And so it's you're not selling anything necessarily, but what you're doing is you're putting your content in front of people who you think would like your music, top level, something everybody can understand, fans of artists who are similar to you. That's really, really simple. So if you are kind of an edgier pop rock project who appeals to kind of, 20 somethings, you like fans of the 1975 or something like that. And like, you're going to go target those people. And really simple. That works really, really well. And we've been running Instagram story ads for the last year or so. And I profile this artist, Lucidius, who's our instructor for the course. What he did was he went from literally 0 fans, making no money, to 3 years later having over 500,000 monthly listeners on Spotify, getting 5 million streams a month across all platforms, making over $20,000 a month on just streaming. And he doesn't tour at all. He literally, he's never played live, or I think he's played a few shows live ever. He built up this hardcore fan base, and it's across the board. He's got 150,000 Instagram followers, 250,000 likes on Facebook. Like it's a real fan base, and his DMs are flooded. Like he shows me his Instagram inbox, and it's insane. I mean, he gets like 100 messages a day minimum. And these are real people, and he did this by running ads. And so he was kind of ahead of the curve. He started this 3-4 years ago when there was just Facebook ads, and then when Instagram rolled out ads, he jumped on that. Now he's experimenting with TikTok ads and Spotify, and basically any kind of ad platform that exists out there. He's like become a digital marketing expert, and so that's why he's our instructor for this course. And so now we have almost 1,000 students in this course that we've taught how to do this strategy, and it's working for the vast majority of them, which is really interesting. Like if their music is on point, it always comes down to the music. It always comes down to the content. If your music or your videos are not really up to standards, you're not going to build a fan base, because these are real people. These are not bots. These are not inflated fake numbers. It's actual human beings that are becoming fans. And that's the most interesting thing. And so this is the thing that I'm like really excited about on right now, because like what's so cool is that even if you're a niche artist, even if you're like an artist that appeals to you do like really quirky, weird, I don't know, like Celtic prog rock or something like that, and like you can find your audience. That's the beautiful thing about the internet, is that like fans of this exist in the world. And so maybe if you live in Lincoln, Nebraska, and previously there were maybe only 3 people in Lincoln, Nebraska who love your music, you might think, man, my music sucks and it's not going to appeal to anybody. But what if there's 50,000 people in the world who love your music? Previously, you wouldn't be able to find those people. Now you can find those 50,000 people, and those can be your super fans that come into your world. And that's like what's so exciting about the new internet digital era, and especially with these ads, is like you can find these people and it's not that expensive. Most people are doing this successfully for like $5 a day to spend on the Facebook ads or Instagram ads. And so that's something that we work with a lot of our artists, and then it just comes down to, what are your goals? And the number one thing that I ask everybody, and I encourage everybody to do, is to set up your 6-month, 1-year, 5-year goals. And then once you know what you're looking for, and you're working towards, then you can kind of reverse engineer the endpoint of those goals, and you can work towards those goals. So like, do you want to get songs placed on TV shows and like sync licensing? Okay, if that's a goal, we can go down that path. If you don't, we won't go down that path, that kind of thing. Do you want to tour? Sweet. If that's a path, a goal, then here's how you go about it, and then et cetera, et cetera.
Gotcha. Cool. Well, that's helpful to sort of get at least a little bit about kind of the context of what people can be doing in the digital era. Let's talk more specifically about right now during current isolation moments. Are there anything we haven't talked about that you would be advising either recording artists or performing artists that they can be doing right now to either be working on their career or even making a living during this shelter-at-home crisis? Is there anything that's sticking out for you that you think people should be doing?
Well, this is a really great time to advance your education, to learn things that you've been putting off. So maybe you had a tour coming up and that tour got canceled. So maybe you want to learn production. Maybe like you want to learn Ableton or Logic and be able to record yourself on your own at home and increase your engineering recording skills. There's a lot of online programs you can take in if you want to learn in a more formalized education place. You can do that. There's tons of YouTube tutorials. I mean, you can pretty much find a YouTube video tutorial for anything. And so I've seen a lot of people hunkering down and increasing their skills, and that's fantastic. A lot of people obviously are live streaming and figuring that out, like we talked about. I think this is a great time for sync licensing. I know this is a great time for sync licensing, which is surprising. It might surprise people that this is the busiest moment in like sync licensing across the board. Like, I've talked to many people in the sync space and they say they've never been busier. And if you think about it, it makes sense, because everybody's at home, everyone's watching Netflix, HBO, Hulu, Amazon, whatever, and playing video games. And they need to continually put out content, whether it's trailers or TV shows, or they're pumping them out because people are getting through them, or video games, all that stuff. And they need music for these spots. And so people are busier now with sync licensing. Like, we have another instructor for an ATA, Artistic Academy course. He's a hip hop artist who specializes in sync. And he said normally it takes him like a month of a turnaround time for when he gets an offer for a trailer to just like hear if he gets it or something. And he's like, now it's sped up to about a week. He'll like get an offer to know if he's going to get this trailer, and then a week later he'll get it or know if he gets it. It's just like sync licensing. If you've been thinking about it, this is kind of the time to jump on that, because it's super busy right now.
That's a great tip that we haven't heard on the Music Tectonics podcast yet. We've been doing a lot of stuff about what's going on with remote collaboration and live streaming. So it makes sense. I mean, we've talked a little bit about the fact that the industry trades are reporting that, video consumption is obviously up with everybody at home. And then there's been different debates about whether audio, radio, streaming, whether it's up, down, threatened, moving around, whatever. But video is clearly up. People are not driving, so they have access to their eyes, and so they're consuming whatever media with their full senses instead of just some of their senses. So that's super interesting. I'm curious if you have a thought on when you think in real life live performance will return. And once things return to whatever the new normal is, what do you think will be permanently changed for musical artists for this next era as a result of the post-COVID time period?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think anyone knows when live shows are coming back. I mean, what I think is going to happen is it's going to start with the smallest gatherings. So it'll be maybe house concerts first, and then it'll move into small clubs, and then it'll move into small theaters, then bigger theaters, and then arenas. They're estimating that's not going to come back till 2021 at the earliest. So I think what is changing in consumer behavior across the board is people are becoming a lot more comfortable with live streamed concerts. So like with UnCancelled, for instance, we're thinking of continuing this past the shutdown. So initially we just set this up to kind of as like to stop the bleeding, to help the artists and music venues get through the shutdown, when we only thought the shutdown was going to be a month or two. Now that we know it's going to be a lot longer, we're keeping it going. But at the same time, once the live music comes back to clubs, I think there's going to be a space where people are going to feel comfortable buying tickets to live streamed concerts, whether those are concerts from your home or they're in the clubs that just have a really good live stream access and capabilities. And people have been doing these for years. I mean, Nugs is a company out there that's been doing this for over a decade, I think, live streaming concerts from all over the world. But I think it took consumer behavior to catch up. Zoom has been around for years. I've been using Zoom for years, but it took the shutdown to get everyone in the world using Zoom, and for that consumer behavior to change. And so, I think where they're predicting people are going to be working remotely much more frequently than they did before, and not actually like realizing you don't have to actually go into the office to get stuff done. I think similarly, people are going to want to live stream concerts from home much more frequently than they did before.
Great. That's useful feedback about what you're seeing and where you're thinking things could go. As we get close to the wrap up here on this episode, do we leave anything out, other things you've been working on you want to share with listeners in the music tech and music industry community?
Sure. I mean, I just actually launched the New Music Business podcast. And so obviously these are, you like listening. If you could stand my voice for the last 40 minutes, you might be able to stand it through a bunch of episodes. I interview innovators in the music business space. So we had on actually a sync licensing music supervisor, Jen Malone. She's a music supervisor for Euphoria and Creed, Atlanta Empire. We also, this week, we have Zaytoven on the podcast. He's a hip hop producer. He's like the godfather of trap music. I had on Andy Grammer, chart-topping pop singer-songwriter. And it's really, everybody who I have on the show, we really get into the new music business. We talk about the business side of it and how they're making it work, and their advice for artists and managers is kind of geared more towards artist managers and artists themselves. So yeah, I encourage everyone to check out the New Music Business podcast.
Awesome. This has been great, Ari. I appreciate you coming in. It's great to hear you just in the midst of continuing this UnCancelled Festival and sharing all your thoughts from your broad brushstroke of where you think artists can be building their careers and the industry overall, but specifically in this moment in time. How can our listeners connect with you and learn more from you?
Sure. I encourage everyone to go to aristake.com. There you'll find information, and we're doing a full website revamp. So by the time you're listening to this, it'll be a whole new website. It won't just be a blog. It's actually going to be the home base of everything Ari's Take. So the podcast, the academy, the blog, everything will be right there. A bunch of videos we're putting together. So aristake.com is probably the best place. And then on Instagram, of course, I'm at Ari Herstand on Instagram or Twitter. That works as well.
Awesome. All right. This has been great. Thanks for taking the time. I hope to run into you in person, but if not, maybe we'll run into each other on an online event soon.
Definitely. Absolutely. It was nice talking
to you.
Take
care. And thank you for listening to the Music Tectonics podcast. I have some news as well. We are launching a new event online called Isolate or Innovate, a Music Tectonics forum for pivots, adjustments, and doubling down. It's a 2-day Zoom forum. We'll have more information about it on our website, so go to musictectonics.com to find out more. It's taking place in May. We're looking at May 19th and 20th from 12 p.m. Eastern to to 5 p.m. Eastern. So go to musictectonics.com to find out more about what we're doing there. It's going to be a pay what you want event. And make sure to hit subscribe and follow our newsletter at musictectonics.com. Thanks so much for listening.
You're listening to Music Tectonics.